Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome back. For this dialogue, we will follow the methodology used this morning at the dialogue with the candidates for the post of Secretary General. Ambassador Mendez will be given 50 minutes to make his presentation, after which we will have up to 3 rounds of 4 questions each, and with answers by the Assistant Secretary General for a period of 5 minutes for each round. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce Ambassador Nestor Mendez, the current Assistant Secretary General of the OAS. He is a career diplomat and holds a master's degree in international policy and practice from George Washington University, a graduate level certificate in diplomatic studies from Oxford University, and a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Belize. Ambassador Mendez served as Ambassador of Belize to the United States of America, permanent representative to the OAS, and non-resident High Commissioner to Canada. He previously held diplomatic posts at the High Commission for Belize in London, 1997 to 1999, where he served as Counselor, and at the Embassy of Belize in Guatemala. Ambassador Mendez was elected as the 9th Assistant Secretary General of the OAS in 2015. He began serving as chairman on July 13, 2015, with a commitment to work closely with the Secretary General and the Member States to reinvigorate and modernize the institution. Ambassador Mendez, thank you for being here today to share with civil society organizations your vision for the OAS and the initiatives that you would undertake should you be re-elected to the post of Assistant Secretary General of the organization. Ambassador Mendez, I know you have an injured foot, so I will ask you to make your presentation from the table and not the podium. You have 50 minutes, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your understanding. Distinguished representatives of member states and observer states, distinguished representatives of civil society organizations, ladies and gentlemen, I am thankful for the opportunity to share with the representatives of the civil society organizations duly registered with the OAS the views and perspectives that will guide what I am hoping will be my second term as Assistant Secretary General of the OAS. 5 years ago, I had the honor of being elected to fill this post, and since assuming office, the journey has been an amazing learning and challenging experience, working hand in hand with the dedicated professionals that comprise the General Secretariat of the OAS and its affiliated agencies. Today, I am pleased to share that in working in all 4 pillars of our organization, I have been able to focus on those critical areas that attend to the youth of our Americas, empowerment of women, climate change and construction of resiliency, matters related to indigenous peoples and people of African descent, in addition to the political and administrative obligations inherent in the post of ASG. In several of these and other areas, we have had the opportunity to work with representatives of civil society, and I wish to underscore the valuable role played by your organizations, both in the specialized sectors covered by your individual missions, as well as at the hemispheric level. I hereby also extend a special thank you to those organizations whose work and dedication have contributed in some way or the other to the efforts of our organization to attain our objectives and ultimately to benefit the people that we serve. Señoras y señores, sus organizaciones desempeñan un papel extremadamente importante y crucial en nuestros Estados miembros, actuando a veces como guardianes de los intereses de la sociedad. Muchas veces, ustedes están a la vanguardia enfrentando graves problemas sociales y utilizan su capacidad formidable de organización y abogacía en defensa de temas complejos y delicados que reclaman atención. Además, en muchos campos de interés público, tales como los relacionados con las demandas de la población para buena gobernanza, las preocupaciones sobre el impacto del cambio climático, la protección de los derechos humanos, la defensa de las instituciones democráticas y en muchas otras preocupaciones sociales, ustedes han tomado la iniciativa para exigir acciones. Yo reconozco la importancia de las organizaciones de la sociedad civil como agentes que cumplen funciones críticas en nuestras sociedades y como importantes socios potenciales en varias de las áreas de trabajo de nuestra organización. Hay mucho que podemos hacer juntos, sin perjuicio del hecho que la OEA está conformada por Estados miembros representados aquí por sus gobiernos y que es de ellos de quien nuestra Secretaría General recibe nuestros mandatos y ante los cuales somos ultimadamente responsables. No obstante lo anterior, muchas de las áreas de nuestro trabajo están saturadas de oportunidades para complementariedad y para realizar esfuerzos conjuntos, y debemos adoptar un enfoque pragmático y realista para identificar esas oportunidades y actuar en consecuencia de ellas. Vienen a mente varios ejemplos. Under my leadership, we observed Black History Month at the OAS for the first time in February 2016, with a forum that was widely attended by civil society. As this had never been done before, the attendance exceeded expectations, and feedback from both the missions and civil society was that we needed to build momentum. My office continued with more activities in 2017, and we eventually worked towards the adoption of a resolution by the Permanent Council in 2018, through which the OAS formally established, as part of the institutional calendar of the OAS, the Inter-American Week for People of African Descent to be celebrated in March every year, and the Inter-American Week for Indigenous Peoples to be celebrated in August every year. These two issues in particular, which are cross-cutting in our organization and touched on in several instances, now have in fact a dedicated political space in which we could deal with them in a fitting manner. And the OAS celebrations of both of these Inter-American Weeks have been growing in scope and importance every year. In fact, with the full technical support of our Secretariat for Access to Rights and Equity, and along with the Member States, we are in the middle of preparations for celebrating the third Inter-American Week for People of African Descent. This year's celebration will be held under the theme Confronting Slavery's Legacy of Racism Together in the Americas, and we have several high-profile activities being planned, including a special session of the Permanent Council. He dado también en mi oficina el mismo nivel de atención política a los preparativos y a las celebraciones de la Semana Interamericana para los Pueblos Indígenas, y en agosto próximo estaremos celebrando nuestra tercera edición de esta semana. De igual manera que ha sucedido con la Semana Interamericana de las y los afrodescendientes en las Américas, esta plataforma política proporciona un espacio dedicado donde se puede avanzar en las discusiones sobre los temas relacionados con los pueblos indígenas y sirve para identificar formas prácticas de ir desarrollando estos importantes temas. Asimismo, yo tengo el firme compromiso de trabajar de manera estructurada y pragmática hacia la implementación del Plan de Acción para el Diseño de los Afrodescendientes y el Plan de Acción de la Declaración Americana de los Derechos de los Pueblos Indígenas. Y mucho me gustaría que aquellas organizaciones de la sociedad civil cuya misión se centra en estos temas puedan convertirse también en nuestros socios. Lo anterior es un ejemplo muy práctico de cómo yo, como secretario general adjunto, he estado trabajando en áreas de interés mutuo con la sociedad civil y promovidas por estas organizaciones, y cómo hemos avanzado con los Estados miembros para integrar estos asuntos como temas del día a día de la OEA. Mi oficina continuará con su liderazgo en la organización de estos importantes eventos dentro de la Secretaría General. Ladies and gentlemen, another very important area to which I have dedicated time and attention is the one dealing with youth, including innovation and entrepreneurship. In addition to offering consistent political support to the work of the General Secretariat in these areas, I have also worked closely with our affiliated agencies like the Young America's Business Trust, the Pan American Development Foundation, and the Trust for the Americas in promoting and actively supporting their initiatives and projects aimed at empowering the youth of the Americas. I believe that not only is there tremendous scope for cooperation between the OAS and civil society organizations in these areas, but that there is also an urgent need to work together on these issues, which by their very nature are time sensitive. Some of our young people need help and support now, before we lose that window of opportunity and they grow older and fall into wayward paths that abound in some of our countries. And there are many ways to approach the issues related to youth. We can look at it from the security preventative angle, working with the youth to help them avoid gangs, from the innovation and generation of economic opportunities angle, and from the perspective of addressing the root causes of migration, to name a few. There is also ample space for cooperation under the general umbrella of identifying and providing support to potential and emerging young leaders, and for working with youth not only in initiatives that underscore their human rights, but also emphasize the responsibilities of citizens in a democratic society. Our region could be much improved if initiatives with young people include a reminder of civic duties, which, along with respect for human rights, are essential for ensuring stable and prosperous societies. In the general area of women's rights and empowering of women, which is another important topic to which I have dedicated attention, there are also many opportunities for collaboration. For instance, our organization's efforts and commitment to rid the Americas of domestic violence requires an integral approach that also looks at the socio-economic elements in many households and prioritizes the generation of economic opportunities for women. While it is important to ensure that the legislation in every country does in fact protect their rights, the socio-economic reality in many of our vulnerable communities points to other imperatives, such as training and small business opportunities, to change the dynamic and really empower women. I also believe that we must find, as an institution, other practical ways in which we listen to the ideas and views of civil society, over and beyond our traditional engagements in the context of the General Assemblies and the summits of the Americas, whilst remaining faithful to the framework for engagement between the OAS and these organizations. For instance, there is one particular ministerial meeting, the meeting of ministers responsible for public security in the Americas, also known by its acronym as MISPA, in which there is already a formal platform for dialogue of our ministers and civil society organizations. This example of a best practice should be analyzed and mainstreamed to those other ministerial meetings where such an exchange would bring value added and where the specialized expertise of civil society could be meaningfully absorbed for the decision-making process. I know for a fact that there is tremendous expertise in civil society in several specialized areas in which the OAS works, and to the extent that we can join forces and identify pragmatic opportunities for collaboration, we should not shy away from those opportunities. Our continued and constructive engagement with civil society also requires certain inputs from the OAS as an institution, particularly in the arena of information sharing for strengthening these relations and in the spirit of transparency. In this regard, I am pleased to note that in the coming months, my office will be presenting for use of the Permanent Council and any interested party. An information product that will include the provision on a regular basis of a detailed report of all of our OAS projects and activities in each member state. This information will be publicly available and will enable your organizations to have a complete, objective, and updated panorama of the multiple things we do in each member state that do not necessarily make it to the news headlines. In addition, we are finalizing an initiative wherein the records of the Permanent Council meetings will be made available almost in real time in a state-of-the-art, user-friendly video archive system that will contribute to informing our multiple stakeholders about what this important political body is doing on a regular basis. These two new initiatives will contribute to a greater understanding of what we do and will be most useful to those organizations looking for opportunities to work closer with the OAS. Señoras y señores, el hecho de que estemos teniendo este intercambio con la sociedad civil, aun cuando somos apenas candidatos buscando ser electos, es una señal clarísima de la importancia que la OEA y sus Estados miembros le asignan a sus relaciones con la sociedad civil. Yo sigo comprometido a seguir escuchando a sus organizaciones, a identificar oportunidades para fortalecer nuestra relación y también a trabajar con todos ustedes en el cumplimiento de nuestras responsabilidades en beneficio de los pueblos de las Américas. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mendez. I will now draw the first 4 questions, which will be read by OAS Secretary for Access to Rights and Equity, Gaston Toledo.
First question comes from Egalde, Canada. Does your definition of family include LGBTI families? Second question is from Amnistía Internacional, la Organización Internacional de Derechos Humanos. Question is, ante las recientes crisis de derechos humanos en los siguientes países, Bolivia, Chile, Haití y Honduras, por favor indique cuáles fueron los aciertos y desaciertos de la Secretaría General de la OEA a fin de garantizar la vigencia de los derechos humanos para todas las personas sin distinción. Tercera pregunta es Red Latinoamericana y del Caribe para la Democracia, REDLAD, Secretaría Técnica del Foro Ciudadano de las Américas, FCA, País Colombia. Hay organizaciones de la sociedad civil y actores sociales que no pueden hacer parte de los espacios de participación de la OEA por múltiples razones, entre ellas porque sus gobiernos autoritarios han decidido quitarles arbitrariamente el registro o impedir que puedan registrarse. Eso es el caso, por ejemplo, de organizaciones nicaragüenses, venezolanas o cubanas que hacen oposición al gobierno. Por otro lado, actores sociales como los pueblos indígenas pueden participar en algunas actividades, pero al no estar registrados, no pueden participar en otras, como por ejemplo este diálogo. ¿Cómo garantizar una real participación de la sociedad civil en la OEA? La cuarta pregunta. Unidad Industrial Itzapalapa, país México. ¿Qué opina el aspirante a secretario general adjunto de que el sector privado y la sociedad civil tengan derechos basados en la Carta Democrática Interamericana en sus artículos 6, 8, 13, 26 y 27 y en la Carta de la OEA en sus artículos 2, 8, 31 y 34 y en las siguientes resoluciones? Acuerdo CP RES 759 1917-99, CP-RES 840 1362.03, CP-RES 864 141.304, CP-CSC 57711 AG resolución 2555 6L010 AG resolución 2694 6LI 011 para incidir en políticas públicas.
Do you need the numbers of those resolutions again?
But
Oh, would you like some clarification?
if you could read the first part.
First part, okay. ¿Qué opina el aspirante a secretario general adjunto de que el sector privado y la sociedad civil tengan derechos basados en la Carta Democrática Interamericana en sus artículos 6, 8, 13, 26 y 27 y en la Carta de la OEA en sus artículos 2, 8, 31 y 34?
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. With regards to the first question as to whether or not my definition of family would include LGBTI families, I think that our societies across the Americas are extremely diverse, and there are many, many families in which there are LGBTI persons or people who identify themselves as LGBTI. I see absolutely no distinction when it comes to families and the rights of individuals in those families and the rights they enjoy as human beings. There are absolutely no distinctions. So therefore, of course, some families include LGBTI, and we have to respect the family, and we have to include the rights of all of these individuals. The second question with regards to the crimes in human rights in Bolivia, Chile, Haiti, and Honduras, what were some of the correct approaches of the OAS in the protection of their human rights? The OAS is always at the forefront when it comes to these issues in terms of protecting human rights and promoting the protection of human rights of all individuals in the Americas and beyond. We also, when these situations arrive, deal with them in the Permanent Council, most of them, and the decisions of the Permanent Council in terms of ensuring that rule of law prevails, that the legislative framework is respected, and above all, that violence is controlled and that the human rights of everybody is respected and protected. Those are things that are the staple in OAS decision making. Son el pan nuestro de cada día. So I think that the OAS should continue and strengthen its decision-making process in these issues, and to the extent where we can actually work with the governments in question to ensure that human rights of everybody remain protected, we should do that. The third question, some civil society organizations cannot participate because they're unable to register. How can you ensure that more of them are able to participate in the OAS? We have several ways in which they can participate, because every year when we have the General Assembly, in addition to the formal list of civil society organizations that are included in the registry, we also many times approve lists of civil society organizations that are not registered but who have expressed a desire to participate. But in addition to that, in the run-up to the Summits of the Americas process, whenever consultations are made at the national level, the requirement for having to be in the registry is not always strictly enforced. I have had opportunity to participate in these kinds of consultations, and I have seen where there is greater leniency, there is a much wider opening. It is, and participation is not as controlled as we do in other instances, like the General Assembly of the OAS. We also should look at the use of technology, so that when we make consultations to civil society, even those that have views to be expressed should have a channel, a way of putting in their opinions and observations, and that is something that I think we need to find a way to structure such a channel, to be able to listen to a wider part of our population that sometimes cannot meet the formal requirements for participation, like the organizations that are represented here today. What is my opinion with respect to the civil society organizations and private sector, and whether or not they have rights to participate? I think it's very clear that the OAS has established a formal platform, a formal exchange mechanism where civil society organizations and the private sector and everybody who wants to participate can do so. I also believe that we must be innovative in looking for other ways in which we can bring in more activities, more involvement of the private sector. Because many of the issues that our countries deal with and that our organization deals with on a daily basis cannot be solved by governments alone. We need to bring in the other social partners, including clearly civil society, but also absolutely the private sector. We have to address the problems together. We have the frameworks established, and we should find other ways in which to strengthen their participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now proceed to the second round of questions.
Cuestión de Equipo Pueblo, México. Ante la crisis del sistema multilateral y la dificultad para cumplir los compromisos de instauración de la democracia y los consignados en la Carta Democrática Interamericana, ¿qué acciones o cuál es su propuesta para renovar y fortalecer la OEA, el sistema interamericano, frente a la nueva realidad política y social del continente? De la Fundación Latinoamericanos Unidos, Estados Unidos. ¿Cómo la OEA trabaja con el tema de la frontera México y Estados Unidos para que los migrantes no sean tratados como criminales? de MULABI, Espacio Latinoamericano de Sexualidades y Derechos, Costa Rica. ¿Cómo se compromete usted para que la OEA vele porque las coaliciones de las organizaciones de la sociedad civil se constituyan respetando la paridad o cierta suerte de cuota, mínimo el 30%, en la representación de organizaciones de mujeres? ¿Cómo se compromete usted para que la OEA vele porque las coaliciones de organizaciones de la sociedad civil se constituyan respetando la paridad o cierta suerte de cuota, mínimo el 30%, en la representación de organizaciones de mujeres? Corporación OAS, Colombia. En el marco de las movilizaciones sociales que se están desarrollando en el continente, ¿qué propuestas y acciones concretas impulsará la OEA para lograr que los jóvenes tengan poder de incidencia y decisión en los procesos de diálogo y concertación que se vienen desarrollando entre la ciudadanía y sus gobiernos?
Thank you, Secretary. Ambassador Mendez, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. What actions to take to strengthen the OAS given the new political reality of our continent? Our organization is 71 years old. We did not get to this stage in the evolution of a multilateral organization because we have been quietly just moving along. Our organization is extremely dynamic. And as new challenges arise, our membership, our member states, and our secretariat has to be able to come up to the challenges. We have what worked 10 years ago perhaps no longer works right now in terms of the actual measures. The principles have to remain the same, but some of our ways of approaching some of the problems have to adjust to the changing realities. With regards to the US-Mexico border and how can the OAS help to ensure that migrants are not treated as criminals, the OAS has always held and is very, very forceful in promoting the view that because people are forced to become migrants, that fact does not, in fact, remove from them their human rights. The issue of borders and the management of borders and the enforcement of laws on any side of the border clearly are functions of the national governments. And the national governments have the right to enforce, to establish and enforce their own laws. Our view as an institution is that the rights of migrants, the human rights of migrants have to be respected regardless of where they are. With regard to the question, how do you commit to ensure that the OAS helps to make sure that the composition of civil society is made up, including a minimum quota for women participation? I think this is a pretty complicated question, because while we work with governments to promote the view that there must be greater gender inclusion and there must be participation of women in certain echelons of government, in places of high authority, it's a different question when it comes to civil society. And I think civil society will be the first to resist if governments or if the OAS will try to put in place criteria telling them how their membership should be made up. There are some organizations that have a very, very specialized objective where the composition of the gender balance may not necessarily be the biggest element to consider. So I think this is a conversation that needs to be had. I think the composition of the membership in terms of the ratio between men and women should be examined on a case-by-case basis. And I think that if civil society collectively feels that there is a need for this, that is a conversation that we can have with them. But I do not think that the OAS should be the one imposing on civil society how their membership should be made up. With regards to how do you ensure that youths have a greater impact on decision-making and the dialogue in the continent, the issue of youth has been a central element in the work of my office since I took office in 2015. Everything that has to do with youth and finding new ways for them to have a bigger voice, a stronger impact, a more innovative approach for participation, I am all for it. We have to look at additional use, newer use of technology, because you have to communicate with this segment of our population in a channel or in a mechanism, in a way, in a format that they actually are tuned into. These days, if you want to reach a certain segment of the population and you put an ad in the newspaper, chances are they don't read newspapers. But everybody has a cell phone, or almost everybody has a cell phone in their hands. So we have to find ways to communicate with them in formats that they are tuned into. And we have to find ways of being able to listen to them in those same formats. That's why opening other avenues for engagement with civil society, including youth organizations, is so important. Our organization has the obligation to open up those channels and ensure that their voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Mendez. And now to the final round of questions. I am advised that there are only 3 questions left in the box.
Question de ODECO, Coordinadora Grupo Poblacional Afrodescendientes Foro Ciudadano de las Américas, from Honduras. ¿Cómo la OEA, y en particular la SGA, puede impulsar estrategias para alcanzar los objetivos del Decenio Internacional para los Afrodescendientes 2015-2024? ¿Cuál sería su compromiso de ser elegido para dar relevancia y accionar al plan de diseño que tiene la OEA? Asociación de Mujeres Trabajadoras Sexuales del Paraguay, Unidas en la Esperanza. ¿Cómo indicará para que cesen los femicidios y violencia institucional que viven las personas que ejercen el trabajo sexual? Centro de Estudios y Promoción del Desarrollo, DESCO, Coordinadora Andina Foro Ciudadano de las Américas, Perú. ¿Qué acciones prevé incluir en el plan de trabajo para, desde las competencias de la SGA, poder activar de manera decidida los mecanismos hemisféricos y la colaboración entre los países para erradicar la corrupción en la América Latina y el Caribe?
Thank you, Secretary Toledo.
Thank you. Welcome.
Ambassador Mendez.
Thank you very much. I spoke at great length about the issue of Afro-descendants in my presentation. Es un tema que tengo muy cerca de los trabajos de mi oficina, que de hecho que nosotros le hemos dado un impulso muy grande en la OEA. Nosotros trabajamos con el Consejo Permanente para establecer la Semana Interamericana de Afrodescendientes. Cada año, desde entonces, es mi oficina que se encarga de los preparativos, junto con los Estados miembros y las otras secretarías técnicas sobre el tema, para darle un realce y aprovechar esta ventana política dedicada a los temas de afrodescendientes. Yo creo que para movernos en la dirección de la implementación del plan de acción para la década, tenemos que empezar con esas, with the low-hanging fruit. No podemos como organización realísticamente pensar que vamos a implementar todo el plan en una sola vez. Tenemos que empezar con lo que se puede hacer en una forma práctica, realista, poco a poco, y ir construyendo sobre esos éxitos. Nothing brings success like success. Entonces tenemos que empezar con esas cosas que podemos hacer y luego ir construyendo sobre ellos. Y nosotros tenemos que trabajar también de la mano con esas instituciones de sociedad civil que están interesados en estos temas. Todos los temas que se han puesto sobre la mesa, en todos estos temas hay espacio para trabajar con sociedad civil. No podemos hacerlo solos, tampoco sociedad civil puede hacerlo solos, tenemos que trabajar juntos. Con respecto a la pregunta de qué se puede hacer para erradicar el femicidio contra las trabajadoras sexuales, yo creo que el femicidio, los homicidios y todo tipo de delito que tiene que ver contra los derechos humanos, contra nuestra gente, tienen que ser tratados de la misma forma, no pueden ser tolerados bajo de ninguna forma. Y si hay espacio para crear programas especiales específicamente para este tipo de poblaciones con unos problemas muy específicos, con unos desafíos muy específicos, tenemos que trabajar de forma muy puntual con las autoridades de esos países. Creo que es un tema que no se puede tratar todo con la misma brocha, todo con el mismo plan, todo con el mismo mecanismo. Los principios permanecen en la defensa de los derechos de todos los seres humanos. Sin embargo, tenemos que ver caso por caso las situaciones en los países y cómo podemos trabajar con las autoridades para tratar estos problemas específicos. Con respecto a la erradicación de la corrupción en Latinoamérica y el Caribe, esto fue un tema que se debatió, se discutió a profundidad en la última cumbre de las Américas. Nuevamente, lo que se necesita es un menú de varias acciones que tienen que ir desarrollándose al mismo tiempo. Tenemos que trabajar desde el fortalecimiento de las instituciones de gobierno, de las instituciones oficiales. Tenemos que ver cosas muy prácticas, por ejemplo, como mejorar la automatización de ciertos servicios para ir minimizando esas oportunidades de contacto directo que muchas veces dan surgimiento a oportunidades para corrupción. Tenemos que hacer más eficientes los servicios del Estado, porque muchas veces es la frustración en poder tener estos servicios a tiempo que obliga a ciertas personas a verse necesitados, a verse en necesidad de buscar otras formas de obtener estos servicios, llevándolos a actos que no deben necesariamente de estar haciendo. Pero tenemos que empezar antes de eso, no es suficiente. Tenemos que empezar con ir subrayando y reintroduciendo donde ha desaparecido en la educación escolar a temprana edad los valores cívicos de una sociedad democrática. Tenemos que ir formando esas ideas, esas personalidades, esos jóvenes del futuro para que sepan que mientras que en nuestra sociedad todos hablan de competir y ganar, no se puede ganar a toda costa. No a base de tus principios, no a base del bienestar de la sociedad. Esos valores tenemos que ir reintroduciéndolos y tenemos que ir insistiendo en ellos cuando van creciendo nuestras juventudes, nuestros estudiantes y especialmente cuando se van formando los líderes del futuro. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ambassador Mendez. And that brings us to the end of the question and answer period, and I'd now like to offer you the floor for your concluding remarks. You have the floor, Ambassador Mendez, for 5 minutes.
Muchísimas gracias, presidente. Thank you very much again for this opportunity to present some of my views on the engagement and the importance of civil society in the entire work of the Organization of American States. As I said in my initial statement, civil society organizations are our natural partners. They are our strategic partners, and they have a tremendous amount to contribute in many of the areas of work of our organization. And we have to be smart in the way that we're able to work with them to make optimal use of what they can bring to the table, remaining, of course, faithful to the framework that has been established for our engagement with these organizations. There is also a great deal of talk, many times when we talk about civil society, about more dialogue, more discussions, more opportunities for coming together, which is important and which is fine, and I have nothing against it, and I think we have to create more of those opportunities. But it is equally, if not perhaps more important, to consider the listening aspect. ¿De qué nos sirve que nos sientemos a hablar una semana completa o un día o medio día y lo que nos digan no tenemos la capacidad ni los mecanismos como institución para absorber esas ideas que nos trae la sociedad civil? Es por eso que la idea, la sugerencia, la propuesta de ir buscando esas otras instancias a nivel ministerial, ya mucho más especializado, donde se pueden abrir las oportunidades para diálogo con sociedad civil, para que en esos sectores especializados, las ideas que traen muy puntualmente en esas áreas, en esas ministeriales, sí tenemos esas capacidades para ir absorbiendo esas buenas ideas, esas buenas contribuciones que vienen especializados de los sectores de sociedad civil. La reunión ministerial creo que nos da un buen ejemplo de un caso que debemos analizar para ver cómo lo podemos expandir a otras áreas donde sea apropiado, porque no va a ser un remedio o un mecanismo ideal que funcione para todas las reuniones ministeriales. Hay que verlo caso por caso. También creo que mientras nos movemos hacia el futuro, tenemos que utilizar más tecnología. Tenemos que ver la forma de acercarnos más a nuestra gente en una forma que sea práctica, que sea eficiente y que sea real. Tenemos que utilizar más tecnología, especialmente cuando estamos tratando temas que tienen que ver con acercarnos más a la juventud. Sobre todo, pienso que nuestra organización tiene una responsabilidad enorme, no solo con los estados ni los gobiernos, sino con la gente de las Américas. Yo estoy comprometido en que nuestra organización tiene que seguir tocando día a día la vida de los millones de personas que alcanzamos el día de hoy. Pero también tenemos que mostrar de mejor forma qué es lo que estamos haciendo, porque hacemos muchísimo y no siempre se ve. Desde mi oficina vamos a seguir haciendo lo posible para ir mejorando este aspecto de promocionar lo que hacemos como institución. Y siempre tenemos que mantener presente que lo que viene primero en las Américas es la gente de las Américas, los ciudadanos, los seres humanos. A ellos nos debemos y a ellos tenemos que seguir sirviendo. Muchísimas gracias.
Ambassador Mendez, thank you for participating in this dialogue and sharing your vision for the next 5 years of the OAS, should you be re-elected. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the dialogue between civil society organizations and Ambassador Mendez, candidate for re-election to the post of Assistant Secretary General of the OAS. I thank you all for participating and wish to extend our most sincere appreciation to those who followed the event via webcast. Thank you very much.